y'all. My name is Maggie Dickens, and I am a professional counselor and personal coach based in Houston, Texas. I'm going to take the next few minutes to go through the small group practice format that the American Society of Clinical Hypnosis uses during their Level 1 workshops. Now, this may have been sent to you in an email prior to your first workshop, or perhaps you are watching this video during your first workshop. Either way, all of this information is very helpful to know about before your workshop, and especially important before your first small group practice session, which may be right around the corner for you. So I'm going to take just a few minutes and share some slides with you and also go through some paperwork that is part of our structured and very helpful small group practice settings. If you have any questions regarding any of this information, whether it's before the workshop or before your first small group practice, please reach out to the chair of your workshop or to the ASH staff member that is in your Zoom room or sent you this email. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right, so here we are talking about small group practice sessions, which is by far and away the most fun part about this entire workshop. Well, at least for me. And again, my name is Maggie Dickens, a professional counselor and personal coach, and I love the online format so much that my entire counseling and coaching practices are held online. And so that means that as I'm talking with you about having small group practice in an online setting, I am here to kind of guide you into knowing some of the tips and tricks to maximize the online format when utilizing clinical hypnosis. I don't have any disclosures to discuss, and here's the main objective for the next few minutes. Now, small group practice is meant to maximize the workshop that you are a part of. And that means not only listening and watching and reading, but also the doing. And we really want this to be this experiential learning. So we being faculty members, will be there with you to help you throughout your practice session. But this is your time to thrive, to ask those questions, to push yourself, to challenge yourself, to utilize clinical hypnosis in your own way. And so you will be able to do this over 4 sessions throughout the entire workshop. So whether your workshop is virtual or in person, you will have 4 opportunities to practice. And in level 1, you are building on your skills throughout the workshop, meaning that 4th small group session, you are going to be doing a whole lot more than you did in that first one. And while that can sound a bit intimidating right now, trust me, you will be prepared and you are going to be awesome at it. I cannot wait to be a part of your small group if I'm there, I guess. The great thing is that you will have the same small group cohort every single practice session. And the faculty will be different. So the goal is to have 4 separate faculty members so that you get 4 different points of view from both medical and a mixture of medical and behavioral health to help give you some feedback from their point of view and how they incorporate clinical hypnosis. All right, so let's talk about how each of the triad practice groups within the small group practice session will be determined. And that is one of the aspects of small group practice that can take up a little bit of unnecessary time, where a faculty member would say, who would like to be the first facilitator or the first recipient? And we all kind of look around, point to each other, touch our noses, do those things to either volunteer or to skip that round. And this is a great format in order to expedite the process of who is facilitating being a recipient as well as the identified observer. It is also helping to mitigate any potential fractionation or unwanted fractionation throughout the small group practice session. So if you'll see here, giraffe is the first facilitator, with camel being the first recipient and dinosaur being the first observer. And in the next triad, the recipient, the first recipient, which was the camel, is now the facilitator, right? So the first person that receives or is the recipient within the triad becomes the facilitator in the second go around, with the identified observer becoming the new recipient, and another third person within the larger small group practice becoming the observer. And then the third go around within the small group practice session, the first recipient, so camel, now becomes the observer, with the second recipient of the dinosaur becoming the facilitator, and that second identified observer is now the recipient. So if you notice, we'll go back in time a little bit. The first time around, camel was recipient, then facilitator, and then observer. This is a great way to, like I said, keep things moving forward. You also know what to expect. It is also really helpful in reducing any amount of time left for having these discussions, because the time in small group practice is very precious and is meant for you to be practicing. And so we hope that this process will be very helpful for you. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, each of the small group sessions are going to look a little bit different in what you are practicing and what clinical skills you are practicing in these small group settings. And so the first session is going to be very short in terms of the clinical hypnosis work, but there's going to be a significant amount of time, anywhere between 20 and 25 minutes, that is set aside for rapport building. There is a specific form for rapport building. I'll show you what that looks like. And this rapport form is actually used in both level 1 and level 2 because it is so helpful in building that very important rapport that we know is vital to any type of relationship and benefits and outcomes within a relationship. It's also a great way to understand that we are not doing therapy or doing medical work. Instead, we still need a bit of a history of sorts. Those were air quotes there, so that you will be able to better know who you're talking to. In clinical hypnosis, so much of the skill building is language building and using using the recipient as your script. Now, in your packets, you did receive some scripts as a guide. These are not to be used during the small group setting. They're not to be read verbatim, not pulling them out on your tablet and reading them. Instead, take a look at those ahead of time to understand how to formulate language, but use your recipient as your script. In each of, before I get into session 2, in each of these small group sessions, you will see a demonstration of a different type of elicitation of trance. The first is going to be diaphragmatic breathing, and that's what you're going to practice in your first session. The second is going to be an eye fixation, and you will practice that in your small group session. You are also going to add in something called intensification, and you will have had a discussion on intensification and styles for intensification before your second small group. In the third small group setting, you will have first observed an eye roll or 2, and you will be able to practice that elicitation style. Then you're adding in a different intensification that you didn't use in the session before, adding in a couple of things that you will have learned throughout the workshop. Ego strengthening, suggestions to a goal that you set with your recipient, and a different reorientation than you've done in the previous 2 sessions. And then that fourth one, that one that has all of the aspects of the anatomy of a hypnotic session, and that will be practicing a noticeable hypnotic phenomena. You will have an elicitation shown for you, most likely an arm levitation or reverse levitation, depending on the workshop. It's important to keep track of time. That is up to the faculty members. But as I mentioned, every single person is needing to be the facilitator and the recipient. We want to make sure that there's enough time for some good practice in there, but also having enough time to get through everyone. This may mean that your typical feedback style, meaning my typical feedback style, which is heavy discussion, will need to be dialed back in order for us to get through everyone in the time allotted. And so here's a time breakdown. You can see in that first group, there's 20 minutes for rapport, but in the rest of them, you're only spending about a minute setting up that rapport. We know that you don't need a lot of time for rapport setting. That time is really there to introduce and get used to introducing hypnosis and setting a goal. And you can see that in that first session, you will be practicing your skills for about 3 to 4 minutes, and the others are 5 to 10 minutes. And so there's plenty of time. Faculty members will all tell you a different way that they like to give you a heads up that you're running into that 1 to 2 minute mark before the hypnotic session would need to be completed, and each one of those faculty members will tell you what they do. In an online setting, I typically just put my video up, put my smiling face on there until I see that you acknowledge me, and then I take my video back down. In an in-person setting, I typically do this with my hand to kind of symbolize the reorientation. And remembering what I said just a minute ago about time, we want to make sure that there is ample time for feedback without digressions or spending a lot of time on case consultation, because that's not what small group practice is. This really is a time for you to practice and to practice those skills that you've been learning in the workshop. So as you can see, we're really only looking at 1 to 2 minutes per group here. Again, it is up to the faculty members to keep track of time, and we will make sure that the faculty members know this. And it's also important to know that if you have any specific and individualized questions, you are welcome to join the listserv. There's great information there. ASH members are able to join that listserv. You are also able to speak with faculty members during breaks. Keep in mind they need to take a break too. But also there's individualized consultation that's part of ASH membership, and it's what's necessary for certification. You'll have another lecture on or discussion on that. But faculty members will know that there are teachable moments that may necessitate flexibility in the schedule. So you may go 2 to 3 minutes into your break that comes after each small group, and please be patient, as sometimes that is one of the most necessary things to make sure that we're all learning from a very interesting or unexpected event or experience in the small group practice session. And so you have been provided a small group report form, which hopefully I've set up in my slides for you to be able to see. The faculty members have an outline of what you'll be going through and what you'll be practicing. It's similar to what I just showed you. And there is a checklist as the group member observing for you to note anything in particular. The do's and don'ts, the main thing is don't digress from the purpose of the small group session. It's not case consultation. It's also not the time to role play. Oh, this is my client's or my patient's experience. Let me bring this in and see how someone would handle it. This is also not a time for therapy or medical practice. Please have fun. This is, like I said, it's the most fun for me and everyone that I talk to that goes to these workshops. This is if we could do this all day, every day, we would. But we have to do some discussion as well. You'll be amazed at what you already know. You are the expert in the room. You are an expert at professional counseling or being a orthopedist or an anesthesiologist or being a social worker or a psychiatrist. You are an expert at doing that. You are adding clinical hypnosis to your practice. And so I really challenge you to be amazed at how much you already know and how well you will do in your small group practice setting. Just as in your practices, confidentiality within the small group setting is very key. While we're not doing therapy, it is a time where people may do things that are considered embarrassing for them. I have almost fallen out of a chair once, and that was in front of an entire group of people. So, that was fun. Or maybe someone starts busting out laughing, or as just an emotional release, or they start crying, or maybe someone, just is a little bit more shy. That's me. I know it's hard to tell, but that's me. So anything that happens in small group stays in small group. And if you have any specific questions, you can ask the faculty member that was there. You're welcome to talk about your experience, but not the experience of other people. All right. I think I was able to get through those very quickly. Now, what I haven't done is shown you the forms. So hold that thought as I bring up some forms for you. Now, my forms are going to look a little bit different from yours, just because I'm pulling mine from the standards of training that were adopted in 2019. And it's also going to look a little bit different in their where they're found in your packet, but all of this information is there. And if you're watching this before the workshop, please just take a look at the packet of information that was either emailed or snail mailed to you, and make sure that you have everything that I'm talking about at your fingertips. All right. So the first thing to note is that the small group practice has a specific time frame. We talked about that. You are going to find in your packet some physiological and psychological signs of trance, which is really helpful when you are observing, as you're going to be noticing a lot of these things, if not all of them in some cases. This is the Rapport form. Again, this Rapport form is used in level 1 and level 2. The way to complete this is to have every one person in the group, so every member of the group, including the faculty members, will have one of these forms for themselves. I'm an electronic person, so I pull mine up on my iPad and I write directly on there, or sometimes I'll even pull this up and I will type directly on my computer. You are welcome to print this out and hand write on there, whichever is the best medium for you. The way this works is we go around in a circle, so to speak, and everyone will go down the column, okay? And you can see that there are 6 rows here, and each row is for a member of the small group. So if you only have 4 members, you'll only use 4 columns? Rows. Haha. There's 6 columns. Sorry about that. And so you'll only use 1 column per person. So that would look like me saying, hi, my name is Maggie. My legal name is actually Ella, but I go by Maggie. I am an LPC. I'm also an addiction specialist in Texas. I have tons of experience using clinical hypnosis, guided imagery, and meditation. And this is a great time for those of you who are in level 2 and happen to be watching this, or faculty members facilitating level 2. This is a great time for someone who has done level 2 training or who has done level 1 training in the past to say when they did their level 1 training, because it may have been only a couple of months ago, but it could have been 40 years ago. So please make note of that. It's really helpful to understand how long it's been in between training sessions. Hobbies and interests. I love to play and watch tennis, but I never do it. I love to travel, but hey, 2020, they put that into the nope category. My favorite places, there's a place in Maine that I go to that is my trance space, but I also love anywhere that requires a passport. I have 2 fur babies. If you saw my previous video, you saw Trixie sitting back there. I also have a foster fail, Miranda. We found Trixie the first day she landed in a shelter, and then we foster failed with Miranda. So those are my pets. And you would continue down that column answering those questions as your group members are writing that information down. By the end of the 20 minutes for rapport building, this entire form will have the information for all of your group members. Faculty members are writing them for everyone. Obviously, I know me, so I wouldn't be typing my information in. I just did that to give you an example. These 3 rows are to be filled out throughout the 4 small group sessions. This is stuff that you pick up as you're observing and as you are part of the small group session. Things that someone says over and over again. One of the things I say a lot is I think in pictures. That is something really meaningful to mention because that is indicating that I am going to be great at visualization. And if I say things like, I feel you, I feel that, right? So I may have a different learning style versus I think in pictures. So that's the rapport form. And then the participant checklist, this is something that is in your packet. This is something to take a look at when you were being a general observer and not the identified observer. This is really helpful to notice, what do you see in the recipient? Because this is what you're going to be noticing as a facilitator in your practice. Now this form is going to look similar to the next 3 forms, but as you'll notice, there is a difference in what you're doing. So this is the identified observer form for each of the small groups. The first one is session 1 with rapport, elicitation, and reorientation. If you see here, there's that word induction. It's a word that was used for many, many years, but has been replaced with elicitation in the ASH Standards of Training adopted in 2019. So you may hear some of us use the old language, but we're all doing our best to use elicitation and intensification or enhancement. So as you'll see, this is what you're going to be using as an identified observer for your level 1, session 1, level 1, session 2, right? So you can see that there was that intensification that was added. It's noted that a lot of people don't use the word intensification with their clients. I don't, but I never used the word deepening either. I think that is some language that we use in our training sessions, but I typically use less jargon when introducing hypnosis to my clients. Here is the observer form for level 3. Nope, for session 3, I apologize for that. And here is for session 4. So you're gonna have all of these forms, and these are for you to use. You may not notice all of these, but this is just a guide to note. And specifically in these longer form or these longer sessions, you will not have time to talk about every single thing you see, right? 1 or 2 very important things that you notice. That's what you'll be discussing in your feedback. You will have received a diaphragmatic breathing script, as well as an eye roll script, an eye fixation script, a levitation and reverse levitation script. Those are there for your reference, not for you to read verbatim, and not even to rely on heavily. This is really for you to read ahead of time. That's what I do with all of my hypnosis literature, is I use it to see how the people within this field and within this community formulate their language to help me formulate my own for the people that I work with, instead of going verbatim. Here is another way to understand how to reinforce the suggestions that you're giving, and you can do that here through these words and phrases and nonverbal communication, as well as some examples of ego strengthening here for you. Additionally, there is a couple of examples of informed consent and a treatment plan, but those are for other lectures. So there you go. I hope that adds some clarity to the small group practice setting in both in the level 1. Level 2 is not using any of those forms except for the rapport form, because in level 2 you are practicing all things that are in the 4th small group practice setting of level 1, and specifically practicing anxiety, use of metaphor, and pain management. So that's a whole nother discussion. But if you have any questions, please reach out to the chair of your workshop or to ASH staff. We are so happy to have you a part of this workshop, and we look forward to working with you in your small group practice settings. Take care, guys.